So he was a lawyer in Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I grew up in Albuquerque. He was born in 1929. So he's older than most other people's dads. Mm-hmm. He constantly encouraged me to do crazy things. Not like crazy physically, but why don't you get an internship at that newspaper? I'll bet you that they'll let you in. Or why don't you invite your principal to come to dinner with you at some speech that I had tickets for? And all of that stuff sort of taught me how to be who I am in the world. Mm. So, and he was so enthusiastic about my successes, which I try and do for my own kids.
And so that's why I keep giving you more stuff to do. Or they might say, I think you're a great employee. And when I was at your stage, when someone challenged me, I got so much better and it served me so well in my career. So they're going to tell you what they're thinking or feeling or the experiences that they've had. And when they do, now you're suddenly having a real conversation. Because I think better. Once you expose that vulnerability, this reciprocal vulnerability kicks in. When someone is vulnerable with us, it's the loudest form of communication. Again, this is a product of evolution because on the plains, or a state of nature, when something is vulnerable, you have to pay attention to it because that means either that, you might want to attack it or that it might attack you or that you need to protect that member of your tribe. So our brains are designed to listen to vulnerability louder than anything else. And when you expose your vulnerability, it's very natural for him to feel an instinct to expose something about himself and say, I had no idea that you felt that way. And I've actually been feeling really bad about it myself. I probably should not have done this by text. But it's saying something vulnerable yourself first that sometimes opens the door. Would it work?
I'll give it a try and I'll let you know.
Good. Yes, let me know. Let me know. And I hope you find a better boyfriend.
Oh, thank you.
Somebody who treats you as you deserve to be treated.
Thank you.
And you might find after talking to this guy, actually, I never want to have another conversation with you. I'm so glad that it would turn out this way.
Yeah. I've never seen so much avoidance, basically, just deep avoidance. And the challenge of how do you have a conversation with somebody who is conversationally avoidant?
Let me ask you this. When you've seen him avoid things, what do you think he's feeling at that moment?
Overwhelm, anxiety. The anecdote that I told earlier about how his anger can go from 0 to 100 is symptomatic of poor emotional regulation.
Yeah.
And generally, I think poor emotional regulation means he probably gets flooded with a lot of very intense emotions and doesn't know how to process that or handle that. And so the easiest thing to do is, build walls, shut all of that out, avoid it altogether.
And when you have seen him be anxious and then calm himself, or you've helped calm him, what was that like? What happened?
He calms himself by going to work.
Okay.
And so that's his work is his happy place.
Right.
And so that's his method of avoidance is he just goes to work.
So do you think it would help things? Let's say you had that conversation. You said to them, look, I want to talk about this thing. Mm-hmm. This is something that I feel really bad about. And I'm not going to judge you. I just want to have a conversation about it, but not right now. Cause I know that, you're going to work and that's important to you. Could we talk about it tonight when you get back from work?
Oh, he's been avoiding this for 7 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think that would help though? If you...
Not the tonight part, because again, it's been literally months and months and months. Certainly, I think in a case in which two people are in a relationship, like for somebody who's listening, who's maybe in a similar situation with someone that they're currently in a relationship with, and that person is deeply avoidant and also a workaholic, then yes, a 24-hour delay is probably useful. But in a case like mine, where there's already been a 7-month delay,
And it might be that he just doesn't have the capacity to have this conversation. But I do wonder if you sent him an email and you said, look, how long did you guys date?
Off and on for about a year.
Okay. Mm-hmm. If you say, look, we dated for a while and this was there was so much I loved about our relationship. It was a really positive experience for me. And I don't want to pick it back up, but I want to remember it the way it deserves to be remembered. But whenever I think about it, I think about this like lingering, nagging anxiety I have about how we broke up. And so I just want to ask you questions about that, if that's okay. You don't have to answer anything you don't want to answer, but you would be giving me such a gift to let me ask you these questions, because I feel bad about this. And I feel like talking to you and asking you questions, it would help me feel better. It'd help me remember the really great parts of our relationship. Do you think that would work?
I think that's good too. That and then the other part that you said earlier. I'm going to transcribe both of those.
Good. Well, and it might be that, like, I mean, we've talked about how different forms of communication have different rules.
Right.
It might be that a face-to-face conversation makes him really uncomfortable because he feels like he does feel overwhelmed. He's out of control. So maybe this is something that's better discussed by email, right? To send him a note and say, like, we don't even have to talk about it face-to-face. Like, can I send you some questions?
You know, New York is, well, it's better than Las Vegas. I will say that.
Okay.
Dating in New York is interesting because on one hand, I think that the selection is better.
Yeah.
Right. There are a lot of people here who are really intelligent, very ambitious, very well educated.
Yeah.
They read books. Yeah. I know that sounds very simple, but it's
a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a really big deal to find somebody who reads books.
Yeah.
Recreationally.
Absolutely.
You know? And so I feel like you find that here in New York in a way that I never found that in Vegas.
And I found that, you know, my wife and I have been together for like 20 years now. So I haven't dated in a really long time. But when I go out and I meet people, I find that one of the ways that I distinguish whether I want to hang out with this person is, are they good at asking me questions? Or do they just wait for me to ask them questions? Or do they ask questions where they actually want to just tell me what the answer is for themselves? They ask me, where'd you go on vacation? So that they can tell me, oh, last summer I went to St. Croix, you know?
Yeah.
Like being able to ask these follow-up questions, particularly if they're deep questions, it's a good signal, and it helps convince other people that they want to spend time with us. So there was this experiment that was done almost 100 years ago now by Harvard. And it's actually one of the largest and longitudinal studies that we have. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It's had different names over the years. And what they did is they found thousands of people and they followed them for their entire lives. And they were trying to figure out what made people successful, what made people live longer, healthier, and most importantly, what made people happy when they got older. And they thought that maybe having a stable job was an important part of it, or having a lot of education, or coming from a good family, because this was back in the 1940s when coming from a good family was a big deal. And what they found consistently is there is only one thing that determines if you're going to be happy and healthy at age 65. And that's having at least a few close connections to other people when you're 45. They started sometime earlier than that.
Right.
And what they've carried away from this, and there's study after study that shows this is true, connections with other people are the most important thing in life. They are the thing that make life meaningful. You know, the Surgeon General just said that being lonely is the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so the question becomes, how do we form those connections? Because we don't have to have a million of them, or even a dozen. 2 or 3 is enough if that's all that we want.